EM, welcome to the podcast. It is wonderful to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Before we get into your newest books, because you've got quite a lot coming out here at the end of the year, rolling right into 2023.
Yes.
Let's talk about your beginnings a little bit. Your first books came out in 2015, and then there was a bit of a gap until 2018. And since then, you're out there multiple times a year with books. What got you started in romance?
So I actually started publishing in 2012 under a different pen name. I was writing urban fantasy and working for a small press publisher. And I was writing a lot of fanfic, like in my off time, which is really at the time in 2012, really one of the few places you could find a lot of romance. And so somebody had read one of my fanfics and was like, this would make it an amazing original story. And I was like, okay. So I kind of started working on it. And then the publisher I was working at kind of had a deal with their employees. Like, if you write a book, let us look at it first and we'll see if if we can publish it. And they're like, no, it's too much of a risk. It's not a big market. So then I looked into self-publishing and took some time with it, rewrote it a couple of times because it was not great. And then I actually the first one that I ever wrote was Verismo. And then I sat on that for a while. And then I wrote Time and Tide and Monsters and Men, which are two historical romances because I'm a historian. And so I figured I have to do that at least once. Yeah. And so I did that. They did not sell well at all. I didn't know anything about marketing and I had no online presence. And so I just kind of let them sit. And I was in academia for a while. And that's where that big gap comes from because I just had no time to write. And then I was inspired by one of those little memes that was like, imagine somebody comes into a florist and says, how do you say fuck you in flowers? And so I was like, I can make that work. And that's what inspired Freehand, the first book of Irons and Works. And it took off. I didn't even know. I was still not online. So my husband was the one to tell me that it was #1 in gay romance. He just like burst into the room and he's like, you're #1 on gay romance. And I was like, haha, very funny. And he's like, no, I'm serious. And so it kind of snowballed after that. And I decided I could do this full time. And so I quit my job and started writing full time.
That is a wonderful story. I love that your husband is the one who got to tell you that you got the orange banner.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
I thought he was just messing with me. Like, it was like, that's not funny.
What were your fandoms?
I really don't want to say one of them, but I will because I didn't know at the time. Harry Potter, that one way back in 2003 is when I first found it on LiveJournal. And then I moved to Marvel. And I will always plug this everywhere I go, the webcomic Check Please, about the little hockey baker. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I was there from like the conception of that. I followed it religiously, wrote a ton of fanfic. And then a little bit of Captive Prince. So yeah, that was pretty much it. But the one I was super, super popular in was Check Please.
That is some of my favorite stories, not just favorite graphic novels, but favorite stories.
Yeah.
Such a wonderful series.
Yeah.
You write all over the place. I mean, you mentioned you started in urban fantasy. There's historicals, as some of your first E.M. Lindsey work. Through all the novels you've written, all sorts of different subgenres. Is it just to keep you interested or because you just want to keep branching out, or where does that come from?
I think probably because my reading habits are really eclectic as well. And so, I get inspired to do something and then I just like, it's like an itch you have to scratch. And it's like, you get this idea, so you write it down. And sometimes I do burn out and I need to do something really different, which is, I think, why I'm kind of slowly dipping my toes into paranormal romance. And I think that was a little bit like kind of burning out a little bit on contemporary and wanting to play around with magic, and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I've never been like a one genre kind of person. So
what keeps your creative well filled? I'm always inspired and just love to see people who can just put out so much work that people just flock to. What does that look like for you to kind of keep yourself engaged to keep going?
I think honestly, for me, like to keep going, I write a lot every day. My typical word count is about 10,000 words a day, because if I stop for a period of time, I can kind of lose the momentum. But I get inspired from just the most random stuff. Like I'll see a person walking down the street and my brain will just come up with an idea of like what they're doing and where they're going and what their story is. I've been inspired by like memes. And I've always been like that since I was little. Like I just wrote in my head, I would just write stories for everything that was around me. And that kind of stuck with me growing up, I think.
I love that it goes back that far, and that you've always kind of had that knack to just get inspired by, whatever you might see in the day.
Yeah. I think I've always had a really like kind of a hyper imagination. So, and I'm glad I kept it. My kids don't have it at all. So like they they don't like reading and they don't like writing. So yeah, I guess I just got all that.
You have all of it, and you did not pass it on.
I didn't share. Yeah.
You've got some co-writing titles in your backlist as well.
Mhm.
What brought you into co-writing the first time, and how has it been working with different co-authors over time, kind of balancing different ways of doing it?
Well, I mean, I had seen it. I had seen a lot of my favorite authors do co-writes, and I thought it would be an interesting challenge for me because I'm a little bit of a control freak. So I thought, well, it would be like it's something that I wanted to work on. And yeah, it was surprisingly more fun than I thought it was going to be. Like my current projects are with Kiki Clark, and we are in the middle of working on what will be a rapid release trilogy. I don't know when it's coming out because we want to get it all finished before we even start putting it out there. But one of the biggest challenges is, again, is how fast I write versus, because I know it's totally abnormal. So trying to match, like kind of slow my pace a little bit and also not let my co-author feel like I'm pressuring them to write as quickly as I do, but it's really nice because it's like, back a long time ago, back in, my undergrads in creative writing classes, we would do like round robins. And I loved that a lot, because you got to see different styles and then other people would inspire you. And I think that's what I enjoy the most is like my co-authors, like they help me see things a little bit differently and maybe consider things that I wouldn't have considered before. And I love that.
Yeah, co-writing is so interesting because you do get that insight into somebody else's thought, and you get to see their plotting process and how they go about creating and working to, make the story.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I was a huge fan of Kiki, and like I ended up becoming friends with her because I just sent her this flailing instant message about how much I loved her new book, and I was really intimidated. I was like, I can't believe I'm going to do this because I'm really, really shy. I'm a really shy person. And then we just became friends. And when we kind of brought up the idea, it was like, I was really surprised that she wanted to, but because, we didn't know each other that well, but yeah, it was really fun getting to kind of get to know somebody else's process too. And it's kind of helped me. Like I used to write, my books used to be very long, and working with her, like it was able to help me kind of say things a little bit shorter and not be so wordy. So, and that's really actually helped a lot in my individual books as well.
Does your plotting style tend to mesh well with your co-authors? Because I know sometimes if you put a plotter and like a discovery writer together, that can get a little interesting in trying to figure out the balance.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm kind of like a quick bullet point plotter because my characters kind of just tend to do whatever they want to do in the scene. I like to have like the basic points laid out. Kiki's a little bit like, she's a little more thorough than me, but we have a very similar style. We generally get on a Zoom and we kind of plot everything together. And then we will make like major changes and then just send like a quick DM like, hey, I just changed the entire plot of this. I hope you're okay. When I worked with Marina Vivancos on the hockey book, she's much more in depth than me. So it took a lot longer to plot it and it was very different, but it was kind of nice to get to see somebody else's process, and it's easier for me because I'm not very attached to my process. So it was easy for me to kind of work with her, in her comfort zone, because for me, it didn't matter.
That's cool. And then you could just take bits and pieces for your own process.
Exactly.
And you go on.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, as this interview comes out, you've got a brand new series that launched in the previous week. Tell everybody what they're going to find in Loose Lips Sink Ships.
Yeah, so it's a duet. They're releasing on the same day because I'm one of those people that hates a cliffhanger and then you have to wait for it. And book one does have a little bit of a cliffhanger. It's something that I don't normally do. I usually write dual point of view, but for these two, book one and book two are that they're the same couple with different points of view. And honestly don't really remember what inspired it, but it was an idea that I had written down. I have like a plot document, and I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to like have a couple fall in love without meeting? And so they're neighbors in an apartment, and they're in separate building blocks, but they share a wall. And it's kind of an enemies to lovers thing. Like one guy's been there for a long time, the other guy moves in. The guy who's been there for a while hates it. He's had his peace disrupted, by this cellist who's teaching kids, making, angry cat noises on their violins, and then they slowly start to get to know each other without ever having met face to face. And they don't meet face to face until the second book. It was an interesting, it was something different, and I had a lot of fun writing it.
What led you to have a duology rather than just one long book, since you're already known for long books anyway?
I think because I wanted to be able to tell the story from each point of view. And the character in the second book, his name is Forrest, and a lot of his plot sort of happens a little bit later than Jules from the first book. And it kind of just worked out better when you put them together, because the plots overlap a little bit, but not it's not like book two is not a retelling of book one from a different point of view. And it just kind of worked out better that way. I don't know. It just seemed to fit for whatever reason. So.
And what an amazing way to approach a story, to where you're going to tell most of this romance without them actually getting to meet. I mean, there's been some classic ones, obviously, over time where they've done that, but that just adds a whole new level, because it's like you could never put them in the same place, but yet you've got to get the feels across too.
Yeah. I mean, as everybody probably knows, I'm very well known for angst. So there's a lot of that, a lot of emotional stuff that they're going through. And I think that's how they end up connecting, is through overhearing what's going on in the other person's apartment. So they start to realize that there's a little more to them than just all their annoying habits that are getting on their nerves.
As readers start to dig into malicious compliance, which is the first of the duology, can you share what a favorite scene was to write within that book that, isn't too spoilery?
Well, okay, my favorite scene is that one probably has too many spoilers, but there's one scene where Jules decides he just really, really has had enough, and he wants to meet Forrest face to face. So he goes over, he gets into his building, and, he knocks on his door, and then Forrest won't come to the door. So he gives him this like really long, heartfelt speech, which I won't repeat now, but digging into that like emotional, because he comes to the realization that it's okay that Forrest won't open the door, because he's finally trusting that like they'll be ready when they're ready, and they don't need to rush it. And so he leaves without feeling like something's broken. And I had a lot, I don't want to say fun, but I really enjoyed being able to explore like kind of that emotional growth, because he has a lot of trust issues.
That sounds amazing. I'm excited for this duology, because I haven't been back to one of your books in a while, so it's kind of time to come back. And this one seems like a really nice package deal to get and just dig in.
Yeah, it's a little, ends kind of cozy romance, and then there's a freebie at the end of Instant Regret that tells a little New Year's love story of two of the side characters.
Oh, fun.
Yeah,
I love that.
It's called Petty Revenge. So
these are fun titles. The two in the duology, and then that freebie as well.
Yeah, I was inspired by Reddit posts, not the plot, but the titles.
As you start off 2023 in a few weeks, you've also got another new series coming out that looks like it's going to go in a different kind of direction for you a little bit, with Madly Ever After. Tell us a little bit about what's going on there.
So that one's a Why Choose romance. I read a lot of Why Choose romance. I enjoy the dynamics. I can be kind of picky about them, because I don't enjoy the ones where it's one person and then they don't have relationships with each other. I like the kind of the polyamory aspect. So those are the ones, and that's what I really wanted to explore to see if I could make it work. So it's kind of and I wanted to dip my toes into dark romance. Not I'm not a very dark romance, like it's not taboo, but it's definitely like it's a mafia story, so they're morally gray, and it starts off a very, very sort of typical White Shoes as she gets kidnapped by the mafia, and then they slowly sort of all start to fall for each other, and the four men in the group are already in an established relationship, and so she comes along, and then getting to write whether like how she disrupts it but also kind of completes it was really it was a huge challenge, but it was also a lot of fun.
The term "why choose" was new for me as I was, doing the research to get ready to talk to you. Can
Yeah,
you define that a little bit for our listeners who may also not be familiar with what that is?
sure. Yeah, I mean, why choose just means like, I mean, it's sort of in the name. It's why choose one person, and it's typically anything that's beyond like a threesome. And a lot of the genre tends to be one person in the center with all the other person or people around them. The person in the center has an individual relationship with everybody else and not necessarily all together with each other, but it can kind of go either way. It's sort of a blanket term at this point, and it's kind of a new term for what was reverse harem, which is a term that's being retired by some people. I mean, as a historian, it's like it wasn't a term that I was super comfortable with to begin with. So I was happy that, the Why Choose has kind of has kind of taken over.
Managing all those people in a cast, that
Mhm.
must certainly be a little bit different because it's more than just having side characters. It's having a lot of primary characters.
Yes. Yeah. And I normally write third person past tense, but I wrote this all in first person present tense. That was more of a marketing decision because that's how most of those books are written. But it was very interesting to have to get into the direct first person point of view of five different people. And because I also typically don't alternate chapters. Like I go with whoever has the most to lose or the most to gain when I'm choosing who's going to be the point of view person. So making sure that everybody at least got balanced you know, without neglecting anybody, I guess. So yeah, it was a challenge. I don't know that I'm going to write a whole lot of them because it took a lot out of me, but it's something I'm glad I did.
Do we see the same five characters through the entire series, or are you moving between whole different groups of people?
It's a trilogy with the same group of people. The first two books end on cliffhangers with the conclusion in the third book. So they're going to be rapid releasing like 2 weeks apart because again, I hate cliffhangers. I hate making people wait. So it just follows basically the journey of I based the characters off of fairy tale characters. So Alice is she's the woman, and she's from like a rival mafia family, and that's why they take her. And then she as she's with them, she kind of learns that everything that she thought she knew about who she was and her family's past was all a lie. And so she slowly begins to ally herself with with those men.
Are there fairy tale elements kind of in the stories or a little bit, or is it
Um,
just kind of a, you know, character names and things like that?
So yes and no. It's definitely contemporary, but each of the characters are based off of either a villain or a hero. Some are more directly named, like James, he's Hook, and he's English and he's got one arm, and he's kind of like a modern day kind of pirate. And then there's Ariel. He's the son of kind of one of the mafia leaders, and he was attacked, and so he's mute, like Ariel. He's a redhead. And then there's Cain, he has the nickname of Hades. They call him the god of death for obvious mafia reasons. And he's the leader. And then there's Phoenix, who I based off of the Beast, that's kind of his nickname is Beast. So I've kind of added in a little bit of like the Beast has a library, in the house and everything. So there's kind of little throwbacks to some of my favorite fairy tale characters without it being an actual fairy tale.
That sounds like a lot of fun to create,
Yeah.
knowing like the characters that you want and then
Uh-huh.
being able to pluck out while not having to keep the entire fairy tale mythology or, keeping it contemporary and not going for magic and that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I was really on the fence if I wanted to do full, like full kind of fairy tale, like little kind of magic adjacent, but it just worked out better that, it's just sort of a modern mafia, I guess, romance.
Mm-hmm. That's so cool. Given the wide range that you read and write, who are some of the authors who inspire the stories that you want to tell?
Hmm. I try, I don't know if this is going to sound terrible. I try to separate my reading from my writing process just because if I look at it that way, I tend to not enjoy the reading as much.
Mm.
I like being able to lose myself in it, but some of like I think like one of the people that inspired me to start a Why Choose was Nikki St. Croix. She writes pretty dark, and this one's more magic. It's called The Vicious Lost Boys. It's very dark, but I got really, really hooked. And it's about the Darling family and Pan, and like he takes each Darling daughter back to Neverland, and he's trying to solve the mystery of where his shadow is. And anyway, and there was I really, really enjoyed that one. And then yeah, I think other than that, I don't like to kind of blend the two. So like I have my absolute favorite must read authors, and then I would rather just be a fan. I don't know if that sounds bad or not.
No, it really doesn't. I find that the struggle can be real. Like if I get into a book and like I'm blown away by the story, then part of my brain wants to go deconstruct why the story worked so well for me and
Sure.
how did
Yeah.
I want to figure out how they built the story. But I'm like, I also just really want to enjoy this as a reader. Sometimes I'll go back to
Right.
books after I'm done and try to
Yeah.
deconstruct, but I definitely try not to do them at the same time. So I completely
Yeah.
understand where you're coming
Yeah.
from because
Yeah.
otherwise
I
it's a
actually I
mess.
tend to I tend to get more inspired by like like my nonfiction history stuff that I have to do. I'm like, this would be interesting, to explore in a different way, which is how like my urban fantasy, my way back in the day got started was during a religion class. And I was like, I could twist this into urban fantasy, and that's, yeah, I really do find myself getting more inspired by like, I think especially because my degree is in ancient history, so there's not a whole lot of evidence left behind, just little bits and pieces. So being able to construct it in my head it's very inspiring.
Do you envision more historicals? Because you wrote some historical, in your first ones, or is contemporary and kind of maybe moving paranormal more where you find your comfort zone these days?
Yeah, I mean, contemporary is a little, it's easier with historical romances, especially being a historian. I have a very hard time separating like fact from fiction, and history wasn't very pretty. Ancient history was not pretty, like it's fun to kind of explore the idea of the Greeks, but I have a really hard time. Like I want to be accurate, and when I'm writing something and I'm writing something that's not accurate, it just, I don't want to do it. And
Yeah.
then if I do it accurately, nobody's going to want to read it. So it can get a little bit difficult. I've been exploring, I'm actually going to be releasing some queer historical, like more Regency romance on my other pen name that I have, Ariel Miller. Hopefully a little bit in 2023, and then 2024. I've got, some ideas. It's not going to be it's going to be kind of a mixture of all different sorts of relationships. So that's something I'm looking forward to. I don't have a degree in like Victorian history, so I can play a little bit more loose with it because I don't know enough to get irritated when it's not accurate.
Awesome. Something more to look forward to in the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah.
You mentioned you had some, go-to authors that you always buy. We always love recommendations, so I'm definitely curious who your go-tos are.
Okay, so a lot of them don't have a lot of books out. The one that I just got finished reading was Ho King Holly King by Sebastian Nothwell, which is kind of like a fae romance, and I was just absolutely hooked. Like that was so good. I read it like 3 times in a row.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah. And then Elsie Davis just came out with the third God Bearer book, And what, like two days ago, I think it was. And I feel like I haven't been waiting that long, but I've been waiting for that one forever because that series is so good. So, and then obviously Kiki Clark, I talked about her. I'm a little biased now, but I was a fan before we were friends. So yeah, I'm so bad. I feel like I can't come up with anybody now. I have a whole shelf. Like, I mean, I got to meet some of my favorite go-tos like Mia Monroe and Kat McIntyre at GRL, which was great. Mary Farmer writes amazing historical romance.
Yes, she does.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that was really exciting. We only got to talk for like 5 minutes, but it was still very cool.
It's
So,
amazing how fast time flies at GRL because you want to
yeah,
talk to somebody, but then you have to whisk away or they have to whisk away to somewhere else. And
yeah. It was my first GRL, so it was nerve-wracking, but it was a lot of fun. And I got to meet John Solo. He'll be working on the Madly Ever After books. That will be a co-narrate with his wife.
oh, fantastic. That's very
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, I
Yeah, I'm
love
really
John's
excited.
narration.
Yeah. So I got to meet him and that was really fun.
Nice. So looking a bit more into 2023, we obviously talked about Madly Ever After, which essentially starts the year off for you.
Yeah.
You're going to be in the Only One Bed anthology as well. What do we have to look forward to in that book from you?
So I will be doing an Irons and Works spinoff, which I've very last book of Irons and Works is called Snake Bites, which just released, and I introduced the owner of the new shop in that book. He was getting ready to leave Fairfield, Colorado, and so in the Only One Bed anthology will be his story of how he meets his former high school rival on the road, and they get stuck in a B&B in a big storm where there's only one bed.
Of course. Snowstorm, one bed.
Yeah.
Best kind of book ever right there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's actually, it's not going to start the series. I'll have one book out before that, but he's kind of the main fixture in the shop. He's the owner, so, and I'll have one book out in April before the anthology comes out.
How many books will we get in the spinoff series for Irons and Works?
So right now I have 7 planned total. So that'll take up some of 2023 and then 2024. But I said I was only going to do 6 with Irons and Works, and that turned out to be a lie. So I'm not going to give it a cap because, yeah, I had a lot of fun. Like I took a long break and then I just really wanted to go back to that universe. So it's probably going to go the same way.
Can we talk for just a second about the amazing recovers of Irons and Works that you just put out? Those are so gorgeous.
Yeah, they're special edition covers. I've done commissions for the special edition print covers by Tal. I don't want to try to pronounce her Instagram name because I won't do a good job. But yeah, she's done work for Riley Hart, Saxon James, Eden Finley. I think she did Mia Monroe's recent Christmas one too.
And that's a gorgeous cover for me, as A Kiss from Santa. I read that book. I just loved it, but that cover was like what drew me into it.
Yeah. Because I had been, I thought it would be really fun, especially for Irons and Works, to do special edition illustrated covers. So I had done some research and loved her work, and she's so great to work with. And yeah, it's been really fun. So the 3rd one just came out, and it's so exciting to see like the characters that are in my head, like actually not just models, but like actually get drawn out. So yeah, I've really enjoyed that.
Yeah. Sometimes the models can nail it, but when you get that right illustrated cover, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
So yeah, congratulations on those, because those are really awesome.
Yeah. I'm really excited to see them all when they're all done. There's a lot to go though.
Anything else we should keep an eye out for in 2023?
I mean, anything could happen. I'm doing the 3rd book of my Carnal Tower series in March. That will be The Sin of Greed, and that's my current work in progress right now. And I have a historical Halloween vampire coming out in October. And then I guess, I don't know if I should mention this, but maybe I will. I'm part of an anthology coming out in 2023 with a lot of paranormal romance authors. And that will be announced in March. And I'm really, really excited for that one because, again, like I said, I've been wanting to get into paranormal romance a little bit more. So we have a theme and everything. And I'm really excited to show everybody. We've got the cover. It's going to be amazing. So, but
what a great way to dip your toe in too, to just order in an anthology, see what it, check out the genre, see what it's like.
Yeah. And the authors there are so fantastic. Like I'm so excited to work with them. So.
And as we wrap up, how can people keep up with you online so they can keep track of everything going on in 2023?
Well, I mean, anyone can send me a Facebook friend request. I'm not on there a whole lot. My newsletter is probably the best way to get to stay up to date with everything that's coming out. And I try to update my website at least once a month. And then I have a Patreon as well. So, and that's where all the, the spoilers and the sneak peeks and stuff are. So.
Nice. We see a lot of authors getting on the Patreon bandwagon and doing some things by subscription and stuff. How's that been working for you?
I have a lot of fun. It's nice to kind of like, I have no patience whatsoever. So it's nice to have a group of people to like share covers that are like not coming out till next year, and stuff. And then sometimes I need to kind of like recharge when I'm writing, so I can write little short stories and then they get them as a bonus on Patreon. And then a lot of my ARC readers are on there. And yeah, it's actually really surprisingly fun to have like a little group of people to hang out with and get to share stuff with. It's like,
that's awesome.
They're kind of, yeah.
More exclusive than a Facebook group would be, because it's a tighter super fan group, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I have tiers where they get signed paperback books every month. And then like it's all the way from like, like a lower tier where they get little bonus stories. And I have an artist friend that I commission like sketches for, so they'll vote on, which couple they want to see, and then he'll draw a little sketch of them. And then I have some tiers where they get to read my work in progress, which is really horrifying for me because it's not edited, but they seem to love it. So, as long as they don't judge me too harshly for my rough draft, But yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
That's awesome. Well, EM, it has been so wonderful talking to you. I'm glad we finally got to do this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.